there's all these stories about, guys over in Macedonia who are running these fake news sites.
Number 24 is Content Farms in Macedonia.
Бидејќи ако се направи грешка, таа ќе биде кобна. Нема враќање назад.
So Europe need to remain more sexy lady in the world.
Ајде, мајката!
Господа ја чува Македонија и низините граѓани.
Macedonian Foreign Minister Bujar Osmani tells media that he has plans to, quote, convince, unquote, Macedonians that Macedonia's constitution should be changed to placate those ever more demanding Bulgarians. According to Euractiv, Osmani said, quote, during 16 months, we will convince the citizens why the constitutional changes are not harmful for the country, unquote. The Macedonian Content Farmers are not sure what he means by 16 months, but there you have it. And while we are on that subject, the Macedonian Content Farmers firmly believe that in a democratic system, persuasion should be used to try to convince the other side, and that it works both ways. But what we have seen in the past from the current Syriza Dewey government is not persuasion, but coercion. And that has no place in a democratic society. And yet the internationals led by the U.S. State Department and the U.S. Embassy in Macedonia not only smile on it, but encourage that coercion. Just look at the situation in Macedonia's judicial clown show. And speaking of the Syriza Dewey government, Soros Jr. was recently in Macedonia to speak with, quote, my good friend, capital N, period, Macedonian Deputy Prime Minister Artan Grubi, unquote. Jr. was widely criticized for using the N-word, which is frowned upon in Macedonia. We'll discuss all of this and more on this episode of the Macedonian Content Farmers podcast. I'm Jason Miko. Yes, I am Jason Miko, coming to you from the foot of Vodno Mountain in Skopje, Macedonia.
What, Skopje?
Skopje, yes. I confused my name there because I was so excited about being in Skopje, Macedonia. So.
And this is Cvetin Šelimanov, also in Skopje, Macedonia.
Wow. So yes, every now and then we get to do this a podcast in person, not necessarily live, but in person in Skopje.
And one day we'll do it in Arizona.
Yes, indeed, yeah. At the foot of the Catalina Mountains in Oro Valley, Arizona.
Of course, I miss those.
This is episode number 142, and today is the penultimate day of August, the 30th, I believe. Yes, 30th of August, 2022.
So.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have a calendar in front of me.
I'm sure about the year.
Yeah, but yes, so it's good to be in Macedonia, Svetin, with you and my many other friends here, trying to get around and see as many people as I can and do as much as I can, and of course stay current with the news and figure out what's going on here.
Examine the subject matter from up close.
Exactly.
How do you like it?
What do you think of it so far? Well, we could go lots of places with that.
Yeah.
But let's start with kind of what we started with here on the monologue about Bujar Osmani and the Bulgarians. We're contractually obligated, although nobody pays us.
Yeah.
We're contractually obligated to talk about Bulgaria on every single episode. So what's 16 months? Is actually seriously? Is there a rhyme or reason to that?
So the formal reason is that the government is trying to get VMRO to agree to give them votes to amend the constitution and to include the Bulgarian nation in the constitution. And the government has given themselves 16 months to do this. They say that this is the period in which there's a bureaucratic process in Brussels they call the screening process, which was announced many times, which checks Macedonian laws and practices if they're in line with those of the EU. And after this, we can begin proper accession talks. So this is a period in which even the EU says, okay, you haven't actually started the accession talks. And the government says, in this time, we'll try to persuade 4, 5, 6 members of parliament from the opposition to switch sides, to vote with us, to amend the constitution, and this is obviously the condition which Bulgaria puts on opening accession talks.
You said persuade, and of course we're doing a podcast. You can't. I'm using air quotes here. Persuade, meaning coerce.
Yeah, we know how it's done.
Exactly.
Arrests of family members, bribery.
Johannes Balkan tactics, Han.
Yeah, using Balkan tactics, as
exactly.
he said.
So.
Right now in the news, like of the 8 which were originally coerced or persuaded, one is now Nola Ismailovska. She moved from VMRO to vote with SDSM. She's now appointed by the SDSM government as coordinator for Open Balkans, the George Soros-led initiative.
Membership has its privileges.
Yeah. Another Zekir Ramchulovic is now also in the news. He had his wife, one son, and now the other son hired in the Interior Ministry, these are minor things in the grand scheme of things. You would imagine they got more out of it, but free public sector jobs, not necessarily very comfortable or cushy jobs. But yeah, a lot of them had relatives hired in the public sector. 3 of them had criminal charges dropped for terrorism. These are overblown charges, obviously, but they were staring at long prison sentences. 4 of them had minor or lesser, just like corruption charges against them dropped. And we'll see what happens now with if they eventually get to a new batch of VMRO MPs. VMRO leader Mickovski has said if anyone crosses lines this time and votes with the government, that he will resign and leave politics altogether, that he would consider this as having betrayed the opposition, having betrayed the voters and the country. But he's also offering a referendum on the issue, and depending on how the referendum goes, if he runs a referendum on the no issue, are you opposed to accepting the Bulgarian demands, putting in the Bulgarians in the constitution and accepting their historical narrative? And if the referendum fails to attract enough voters, then, it's possible Mickovski says, okay, we put it to the vote, the citizens just didn't care enough. We'll give several voters, several seats, several people will vote for this, so we can open accession talks, and it would remove a major issue between VMRO and the internationals. this is possible, but we'll see. We'll see how it develops.
Right, but again, even if, however, whatever means, whatever coercion, there will be no persuasion. Whatever coercion is used to do this, if that does happen, of course, there will always be more demands from the Bulgarians, just as we said, the issue with Greece was not closed. Well, even if it was closed, it wasn't closed. And, of course, those predictions came true. There's always going to be more demands. As I said, the ever more demanding Bulgarian government. Of course, I think it's worth pointing out the Bulgarians right now have a caretaker government. They have elections. I think this will be the 4th in 2 years on October 1 or 2, whatever that Sunday is. And then we'll see what happens. But it doesn't matter because the Bulgarian government seems to be pretty much united on this issue.
Yeah, a new push for them now is a new issue between the countries is to move. Bulgaria is enhancing its activities in Albania among the ethnic Macedonian minority along the border. Bulgaria obviously claims Macedonians as Bulgarians, but also now claims this community in Albania as Bulgarians. And Macedonia has treated them exceptionally hard under this government. If you remember, under Gruevski, there was an outreach to get... these are very poor, very rural areas. So there was an outreach to give them Macedonian passports, to give them scholarships for some of the children so they can study in Macedonia, get a bit ahead in life. And a byproduct of this push was that since being given citizenship, they could vote in Macedonia. And SDSM made a huge fuss over the fact that few hundred, up to 1,000 maybe of them, voted in the local elections in 2013, I think. SDSM would send journalists to follow them, to scream at them, look at these people, they're lost, they're obviously not from Skopje, they want to vote in Skopje, but administratively, they are residents of Skopje, because when you apply for citizenship in a foreign country, like Macedonians in Bulgaria, they're given a made-up address, usually an apartment of a lawyer who handles their case, or just a made-up address set up by the Interior Ministry as a placeholder for everybody who's applying from abroad. And they had, they shouldn't have voted in Skopje. They don't live in downtown Skopje, but it was a minor issue and minor number of people. Much bigger issue was to bring them to our side. And SDSM actually put in prison the mayor of Mala Prespa, the largest Macedonian municipality, person with serious health issues. Instead of every other Balkan country supports their diaspora abroad, we actually actively try to undermine them. And no wonder that many of them are now lured to the prospect of Bulgarian citizenship. I mean, just as Macedonians are, where in Macedonia have far more opportunities than in rural Albania, as an ethnic minority there, and let alone facing active persecution from what you considered your native country. So there is a census now in Albania, and a lot of them are. It's expected that there will be a split. I'm not sure how. Will it be 50-50? Will it be 9-1 or in somebody's favor? We'll see. The SDSM government has now hilariously asked them to do not fear, be proud, be brave, and declare yourselves as Macedonians in Albania. And they're sending an Albanian, Bujar Osmani, who has every interest to help Albania divide a large minority group into Macedonians and Bulgarians. They're sending Bujar Osmani to encourage Macedonians in Albania to say that they are Macedonians. It's ridiculous. If anything, he will tell them to either register as Bulgarians or even better for him as Albanians. If he's propagating anything, he will try to propagate to them that they register as Albanians. So this is a new issue between the two countries that's developing now.
Yeah, well, wonderful. And of course, the Bulgarians are doing what they can behind the scenes to agitate in Albania. I can't remember, I saw the news article the other day, one of the Bulgarians, I think it was a government official, or people representing the Bulgarian diaspora wanted to go talk to Edi Rama, or the president of Albania, about these issues. Yeah. So it's divide and conquer, typical.
They can offer them a EU passport,
right? Exactly.
You can go to Germany like that, and obviously there will be takers,
right?
Because especially since North Macedonia has abandoned them actively and aggressively abandoned them.
Right. Well, let's we've done our contractually obligated discussion of Bulgaria. I mentioned in the monologue the coercion involved, and then of course the judicial clown show that we have here in Macedonia with everything that's going on. As a quick recap, first of all, you had the special chief prosecutor, Katica Janeva, who of course is in jail right now. And then her office was abolished, and then Vilma Ruškovska took over, kind of the remnant of that. And then there was, I think, last time we recorded, which was I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was the issue between her and the chief of the financial police. Yeah. So and she resigned. She was removed. Right. He resigned. Okay. Yes, we're trying to figure out who's being removed, who's resigning, who's being shot. So where's that now?
So it became clear that this is an intra-SDSM fight, as we said before. Both prosecutor Ruškovska, she was a very active part of SDSM in coercing members of parliament from the opposition to vote for the name change. And the chief of the financial police, he was also very SDSM aligned person who would actively go attack opposition politicians and companies with bogus financial allegations. The chief prosecutor appointed by SDSM, he sided against Ruškovska, and he had her removed. She appealed, vaguely alleged that people in the government. Then she said people in the previous government, there were people in the government who are from the previous government who are working against me, and the appeal was rejected, so she's out. Now, we have this very clear situation that a prosecutor who tried to act not independently, but tried to go after one faction of SDSM, probably in favor of another faction, which is allowed, which is her right, was removed from office. Major violation of the independence of judiciary. And by now it's clear who she was gunning for. She was going after a current member of the government who was member of the previous government as well, Interior Minister Oliver Spasovski. So she had several charges against him. One is that I remember this horrible bus crash in Bulgaria where over 40 people died going from Skopje to Istanbul for a weekend trip. So the bus, it was an Albanian-run company, and they had garage checking the bus in an Albanian village outside of Skopje. And the garage was supposed to be closed because it was not doing its job. You just go there, drink a coffee, pay as much as you need to, and they don't even check your vehicle and approve it. So there was an order in the ministry to shut it down because the traffic police, I guess, did a check on the garage and found discrepancies. And by some reason, it got all the way to the interior minister, or he's like in command authority, because in the end the ministry never closed down the garage. So it's a very roundabout way to say that the interior minister was killed. Yeah, I mean,
Well, there's a Freudian slip there.
it's coming because of the other reason, which I'll just go into. He will get. So that he had a hand in killing 45, mostly Albanian, all of them almost Albanians, going for vacation to Istanbul. So which is a big issue with the Albanian parties. But the other reason is there was a large scandal in which the ministry was found that they were issuing passports to, I think it was 200, 300 people, serious drug runners, mobsters, like human traffickers. One was ISIS. So all sorts of horrible people. They were giving them passports on names of Macedonian citizens who were very unlikely to ever use the passport. So you go to the police and they figure out somebody who never left the country is like 60, 70, or maybe younger, but from a rural part would never use it. And they give you this person's identity with your picture, his name, and his identity number. And you're free to travel Europe, most of Europe, and engage in, have it as your second, third, fourth passport, which you need if you're a drug runner. And when this was uncovered, SDSM quickly said, so this goes directly to the interior minister, no way this is being done without his knowledge. I mean, it's impossible. So the ministry immediately said, well, we were actually trying to catch the guilty parties in the ministry with the help of the US Embassy. So VMRO obstructed this major investigation we were working on. This was to buy time. And then like 4 or 5 days later, they rounded up like 10, 11 minor clerks. No way that a minor clerk will give a mobster a passport without, the higher-ups knowing. One of them was like a major opposition and underworld figure in Turkey, for example, who is directly challenging Erdogan and publishing all sorts of YouTube allegations against him. So this is very suspicious. And the latest in this saga is that there was an open case about this, involving the minister. It was covered up because these lower clerks, quickly admitted guilt and then got low sentences. Some fled to Kosovo, those who were Albanians, and the matter was considered closed by the SDSM judiciary. Now there is a judge, very SDSM judge, very partisan judge, who also is joining in on the allegations. She was presiding judge over the case, and she says, listen, I have a problem. The prosecutors are free to charge. I cannot go as a judge and charge somebody, even though it's clear to me that higher people were involved. So this is expanding. So the judge in this particular case is now siding with the removed prosecutor Ruskovska, and while Ruskovska is more cagey, the judge is openly alleging that the interior minister, the still active interior minister, was involved, and in the press there is very clear understanding that the minister should be charged and put in detention so he would not be able to influence the investigation further than he has influenced it to this point.
Well, that's clear as mud.
Banana Republic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but we shouldn't be overly critical or overly harsh, Sven, I think, because the United States Embassy and USAID has spent €1 billion here in the past 30 years. Other EU member states have spent hundreds of millions, probably over €1 billion collectively, on such issues as talking about the rule of law and the importance of an independent judiciary and things of this nature. So obviously, because they've spent so much money, things are only going to get better, right?
Yeah, of course. Because the US cares about fighting corruption.
Well, we have our own issues, which we don't need to get into right now. But
no, it's clear that the embassy here is the primary driver of corruption, with its support for SDSM, unaccountability in the judiciary, selective persecution of the opposition, and most of all DUI. I mean, their blind support of the Albanian cause, and DUI is now becoming the nexus of many layers of corruption.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. Let's briefly touch on that, because we didn't really talk about it in our pre-show discussion. But I think it's worth noting. Each time I come to Macedonia, within the first 2 or 3 days, I've got a real sense, after talking to a number of people, of what is the big issue on people's minds right now. And of course, it's always going to be the economy and issues like that. And we can discuss that in a minute, and the whole energy issue coming up this winter. But within the first couple of days of being here, the big issue was really just how pervasive and invasive the influence and the power and the corruption of not the Albanians, but DUI. And I want to make that very distinct point. It's not ethnic Albanians in Macedonia. It is the corrupt leadership of DUI, Ali Ahmeti and his party, and Artan Grubi, who is probably his successor, that has just really taken over seemingly every facet of life. And they are the problem. They are probably, set aside issues with Greece, set aside issues with Bulgaria, and of course the economy. This is the major problem facing Macedonia and Macedonians today, is the influence of DUI, which is supported largely by the U.S. State Department, the U.S. Embassy, EU member states, EU institutions, NATO, etc. And how you battle that, I'm not entirely sure. I know there's problems within DUI. There's factions in DUI, just like there are factions in SDSM. And once Ali Ahmeti passes on to a deserved eternity apart from God, the party will fraction and will split up, if not completely disappear. It's always been my contention that the ethnic Albanian parties in Macedonia are cult of personality. They don't have an ideology, right, left, anything. Their ideology is, give me stuff. SDSM, Vumro, like them or hate them, they have an ideology. One of the, sometimes I know people like to say, no, they're the same, blah, blah, blah. But at least on paper, they have very distinct beliefs in SDSM, believes in a utopia and a progressive state that, high taxation rates and restrictions on freedom of speech, blah, blah, blah. Vumro believes more or less the opposite. Whether or not they put those into practice is a different question. But again, going back to my point, this issue of DUI's malign, malignant, rotten to the core influence and the power that they have in this country right now is really eating away at the souls of many Macedonians, and it's got to stop. I think Macedonians can put a stop to it if they were to unite and stand up and say no. Yeah. I'm assuming we have a new U.S. ambassador coming in here in the next couple of weeks, couple of months.
I guess,
yeah. Don't know if she's going to be any different. No. Past experience shows that the U.S. ambassadors are all the same. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the crime of DUI is even more dangerous because it goes along ethnic lines. So basically, Macedonians have the very correct feeling that their country is being robbed by an ethnic minority, very aggressive minority, which has started wars in the region and in Macedonia in the past, and it's aggravating the situation. DUI is keeping cohesion because their share of revenue from the government keeps growing. With as weak as SDSM is, they keep expanding into new institutions, taking them over, being able to hire ever more people for patronage jobs, being able to expand into other businesses which they can regulate and move into their direction. Like there is a lot of Albanians in real estate in Skopje, which is a very lucrative deal, in of course farming, but especially in wholesale, in agriculture. So you cannot, practically Macedonians are complaining, you cannot prosper in this business because your price is dictated by wholesalers, which, when you add an ethnic element, it's an added issue of is an added problem. A huge issue these days with these energy prices is that, you know, the lawless village of Aracinovo, Albanian village next to Skopje, which was the site of a lot of fighting in 2001 during the war, they do not pay electricity.
Right.
So the news is that actually after decades, the government and not the government, the EVN, the Austrian company, said, listen, we cannot go on like this. We're having losses. So they pretended that they lost, that the relay station near the village burned down.
It did.
And they took their sweet time repairing it. So they practically cut off the entire village. Under the guise of, no, we're not cutting you off. We know we can't touch you. We know you have guns. We know this is the original center for drug running. But we just, and they have like 5 houses in the village. They pay electricity. So you cannot cut the entire zone because you have several paying customers in between several thousand non-paying customers. That's the clever trick they're playing. So they say, listen, we cannot cut you off, but we had like a defect. Sorry, nothing we can do about this. So then this village, the famously non-paying village, famously also using now this free electricity to run Bitcoin rigs.
Right.
It's a side business since electricity is free. Why wouldn't you do it? So they came to protest in front of the EVN company and they're shouting, our rights are being violated. And you can imagine, you know, the reaction among ethnic Macedonians. This is obviously...
Help, we're oppressed.
Yeah. This is hugely deepening tensions in the country. We discussed last time the obviously corrupt from the start deal going to the DUI, to a major DUI financier to build like a electronic vehicle company. This failed German company to bring it in Macedonia with hundreds of millions in government subsidies. It's gonna fail from the start. At this moment, Artan Grubi, the deputy command in DUI, is negotiating a very corrupt deal with Bechtel, which with the US State Department practically run construction company, which has to get all the major infrastructure deals in the Balkans. And this buys you the goodwill of the US State Department.
Right.
But in our case, it's not going to buy us the goodwill for the government, for the country, for Macedonia. It's going to buy the goodwill for DUI's continued presence in the government. And it's going to be like a huge billions and billions of dollars worth corrupt deal that the entire country is going to have to pay off. So the DUI line their pockets and US diplomats line their pockets. So yeah, it's becoming unlivable here. I mean, I wouldn't mind a much lower level of corruption on the part of the government if it's done by a Macedonian party for the Macedonian national cause. Like, because we need to stand up to, let's say, Greeks, to Albanians. You cannot do this without some form of state-funded mafia on your part, which will be able to intimidate this person, bribe that person, back off, tell them to back off. Right? It's just the way the Balkans work. You cannot do it with it. I mean, but we now have a much larger, much more corrupt mafia, which is pushing the Albanian cause, which is pushing the country toward breakup, obviously. As Macedonians say, listen, I don't want to live here. I mean, I don't want to live with Albanian criminals as my bosses in what was supposed to be my own country. And on the Albanian side, you have the feeling that this is still not their country. They don't feel it. This is our impression that when Macedonian runs the country, he feels like it's his own, especially from Vilmara. This has not been proven on the side of SDSM. And they try to bring investments, try to build something, try to leave something behind, because they still consider it their own. We have not seen this from SDSM, and we have absolutely not seen this from DUI. That they would put something in place that's sustainable and will actually improve things for everybody, even though it's in some level, you know, to some degree corrupt.
Right.
It's just open plunder.
Yeah, well, I'm a firm believer that if you were to have a more prosperous society, which would be accomplished by bringing in, you know, more foreign direct investment, by encouraging domestic investment, by streamlining regulations, by lowering taxes, all of these things that we talk about as conservatives, and we're the Macedonian Content Farmers, and this is a podcast from a conservative standpoint. If you were to do all these things that were to create a more prosperous society, while, I mean, yes, to your point about the issue of this is the Balkans, 500 years of Ottoman rule and 70 years of communism, etc., how that corrupts people and institutions, of course. We're trying to rebuild that. So add those bedrock conservative principles that apply to the economy, plus, more strengthening of rule of law. Bottom line, you create conditions where people can use their talents and their God-given skills to earn decent income. I think then at that point, then you lower the level of ethnic tensions. But you got to put you've got to take the most corrupt people out and put them in jail. And Artan Grubi obviously is not in jail, and neither is Ali Ahmeti. They're just openly flaunting their corruption in the face of Macedonians, which, as you point out, really increases the level of tension. And then I think people, regardless of their ethnicity, want to leave the country, especially young people. And we see that. You see whole villages that are emptying out and abandoned, kind of like ghost towns in the United States. And that's not good for the country long term. On the plus side, though, and I know because I was down near Bitola this weekend and visiting some friends that, they left the United States, they came back, and you've got lots of stories like that, and there are good news stories. But this core issue of and of course Sırasa Dewey, they're socialist. I mean, Sırasa, to be fair, Sırasa, but let's drop the M since they don't believe in the M. Were before 1991 the League of Communists of Macedonia and seem to have shed very little of their former communist philosophy, especially when it comes to the economy. I don't know where I was going with that rant.
No, yes, people are moving out, as you said, and we had elections recently which touched on Dewey. Two of them were in rural.
The special local elections. Yeah,
one is in like a more Turkish neighborhood. One is in a mix of Albanians and Macedonians around Mavrova, the ski resort. The big issue was to get more than 30% of the registered voters to vote. As you know, we had this hugely fraudulent census which counted the immigrants as actual residents, which confirmed or sanctioned officially the official hugely overblown number of residents and voters. The problem is to get over 30%, which is necessary for the elections to be valid in the first place. So this is how depopulated the country is. Like, you couldn't get 30% of the voters to enroll with all the might of the government. While at the same time there was election in Tetovo, the largest majority ethnic Albanian city, and Dewey was defeated here by a few thousand votes, let's say 10,000 to 8,000, by Bisa, this political Islam conservative Turkish-aligned opposition party. They were with SDSM for a while now. They're in the opposition, so they are now promoting themselves as the largest opponent to Dewey. So Dewey lost Gostivar, the second largest majority Albanian city, to the Alliance of Albanians, and now they lost Tetovo to Bisa, and now they lost the council actually in Tetovo. So the rise of Bisa in Tetovo with regard to Dewey is confirmed. This has largely to do with the other disaster under Dewey SDSM watch that befell Albanians, which is the fire in the hospital in the COVID hospital in Tetovo. How many was it? Like 15, 17 killed? So,
tragedy upon tragedy.
Yeah. Now SDSM had to go ahead, and they charged the brother of Fatmir Besimi, the Dewey finance minister, who was manager of the hospital. He will likely get off with some minor, suspended sentence or anything. So this is the first time we've seen the brother of a top Dewey official charged. But it took huge loss of life under horrific circumstances to even get to this point. So, they're on the downside. But there are other parts of the country which they hold in feudal control, and in the general elections, this will make up the difference. So Dewey could still beat Bisa in elections, even if Bisa is allied with the Alliance of Albanians.
Right. Well, let's talk a little bit. We mentioned energy and Aracinovo and electricity and whatnot. Today is August 30. On September 1, 2 days from now, the government said, I think there will be special emergency measures put in regarding energy and the fall. Of course, everybody's talking about that given the war in Ukraine, rising costs, inflation, blah, 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 everywhere. But especially in Europe, energy prices are going to go through the roof. What exactly are special emergency measures for the energy? Can you elaborate on that?
It will allow them to move money around, which should go from the government for other purposes to buy essential import electricity from countries that still have it. So Bulgaria with a nuclear plant, or Bosnia with its large hydro and destroyed factories. They are the two largest exporters. And last year was a disaster due to corruption, due to mismanagement. Some say, the opposition says deliberate mishandling of the energy sector. We had a large drop in energy production, domestic electricity production in Bitola, in the coal plant, which forced us to import very expensive electricity. I'm not sure if this year they're better prepared. We're yet to see where they stand. If we can reach the usual 70% of domestic production, and then you just have to import 30%. Under these prices, even this is a lot. But if we have a repeat of last year, then again, we're talking hundreds of millions going to electricity imports. So we have major DUI official opening up an energy import company. Zoran Zaev's barely of age son opening up energy import company. So this is SDSM.
Is he good friends with Hunter Biden, or?
Probably the daughter would have better, if the talk about her is correct. If we're talking about the drug use, right? So this is like a 18-year-old kid who set up an energy company, and they're positioning themselves to import electricity from abroad. This difference which we will fail to produce ourselves. Even at best of times, we fail to satisfy all our needs. And now, the government has actually announced that they want to close the plant. This is the stated goal of Zaev's, to go green. This was before the energy disaster in Europe. Now they're reversing course, but it's probably too little too late. So electricity for households has gone up by, maybe 20, 25%, 30%, which is not nothing. Electricity for businesses is where we got clobbered.
They're charged at different rates.
Yeah. Even if it's an office space which does not use much more electricity than a household, because you're making money, because you're a business, because you're productive, you get hit by a much higher price. And if you hire above a certain number of people, you can negotiate your price on the open market, which sometimes was good for the businesses. Right now it's horrible. They pay every day we get small burek shop, a bakery tells you, listen, I got a few thousand euros a month bill. This is ridiculous. And I use gas, for example, as primary energy. So this is going to destroy businesses. This is bleeding into the general inflation. So this is a disaster. On the other hand, the labor market is surprisingly good. Like in the US, I don't have a good explanation or a good theory in this. So people are getting second jobs, better jobs. So they're keeping up. There is no widespread but I'm sure there are households which are struggling, maybe not in my circles. But people are complaining that money keeps going, and sooner than you would expect.
Well, and homes, talking about the coming winter, homes that are on, in cities and towns where you have the radiators, that's the hot water running through. It's
just Skopje.
That's just Skopje. The other towns don't have that.
No,
I have to.
Nobody has that.
Remember that. So they're all having to heat their homes through the heating AC heater. Versus whatever you call that. The pellets.
The pellets were popular for a while.
For not anymore.
There is talk about
Firewood,
both quality
yeah.
and price of the pellets
Yeah.
and availability. Firewood,
Yeah.
people are going to firewood, and now that has doubled in price as well, almost doubled.
Right.
Because, the companies realize, listen, we can gouge you because electricity is going to be unaffordable.
To speak nothing of illegal forest
Yeah,
cutting.
of course.
So,
Again, Dewey
yeah.
is alleged to be
Champions.
major
Right.
in illegal forest logging, forest cutting.
Yeah.
So yeah, we might not have gas in Skopje because Skopje is heated with gas. So the government says, okay, we'll cover because these are the rich kids of Skopje, they cannot lack for anything. So the government says, we will keep the prices, we'll just increase it by 10-15%, don't worry, but you will have heating. Now that we are arming Ukraine actively, it's possible that we may not have gas, period. So in this case, 2 of the 3 boilers in Skopje can be switched to heating oil, which will mean plumes of dark smoke above the capital, but still, at least the
least you
system
won't
will
freeze.
work. Yeah.
You won't freeze or have to resort to cannibalism.
But where I live, the third one, probably, I think it's not, they can't convert it. That's also a plant which uses gas for electricity, so it's a part of our electricity, one of our electricity pillars as well. So yeah, that's the problem with Skopje. With the rest of the country, the problem is that they're switching to firewood. If they had gone to a better, they bought maybe, these were popular, there was a program, you give back your stove and you get a few thousand dinars to buy to go toward your inverter AC, which is energy efficient, it works at -15, so it can still heat your home, it's clean, you don't have to get yourself dirty, you just push the button, you get heating. And then there was some subsidies, maybe you can put some plastic PVC windows, so then you're not bleeding warmth, etc. Now people who have done this are scrambling to find a new oven, a new furnace, wood burning, to replace the one they gave away, and also have to pay not 100 but maybe 70% more expensive firewood, because they're being gouged by maybe people are in the know, in position of power, making money importing electricity and also gouging people for firewood.
Right. Well, I mean, the government's response is going to be, or maybe it already has been, just keep your homes heated to say 16 in winter, which is 61 Fahrenheit, and wear an extra layer of clothes, wear that jacket around the house, sleep with another layer of clothes on, or something like that.
Which will be, anyway, it's common that people heat only one room in winter, and this is the level of poverty here, of energy poverty.
Right.
And we'll see, this year is going to be extra bad. So
yeah. Well, if there's a brighter side to what we're talking about here, is that the rest of Europe is having some of these same issues. So you're all going to freeze. I live in the deserts of Arizona, where it doesn't get quite as cold, and we're pretty much energy independent. So sorry, suckers.
Thanks for pushing Ukraine in war with Russia.
Oh, wow. Well, let's see. Again, today's the 30th. Next week is Macedonia's Independence Day, September 8th.
One of our more ironically named holidays.
So 31 years, celebrating 31 years of independence, if I did my maths correctly. Not sure what the government has in plans for a celebration, or if people are going to be inclined to celebrate. That's a Thursday, so that's a holiday. So people take the week. People take Friday off. It'll be a long weekend, I think. Not sure how people are going to celebrate, or if they're going to be able to look at the positive things that are going on in Macedonia.
Trying to think of something.
Well, whenever I come here, one of the things I try and do, at some point in the conversation with friends, is always just tell me one positive thing about what's going on here, and I can get folks to do that.
You'll get a few things.
Yeah, I get a few things, and I think there's more than there are more good things here in Macedonia than we give credit for. So let's see, what is our time here? Probably we can wrap it up. I don't have a farmer's pick, but one thing I am going to do. So I am not a gin drinker when it comes to spirituous liquors. I like my mastika, rakia, my scotch. But there is a producer of Macedonian gin, the first in the country. It's called Smidgen. For listeners not familiar with the English word smidgen, it means just a little, but it's S-M-I-D, S-M-I-D-G-I-N. So you get gin and smidgen, which is why it's called that. Anyway, that was more of an explanation than we needed. But, the base ingredient of smidgen, of gin, is juniper. Of course, Macedonia has abundant juniper trees and juniper berries. It's been on the market, I think, for over a year. And I haven't tried it because I'm not a huge gin drinker, but I might be convinced to start drinking gin again. So it's not really a farmer's pick. Maybe we'll put a link to it in the show notes because they have a website. And I think on the bottle, I don't have one in front of me, but it says from the wilds of Macedonia, which is a nice touch. But I think it is one of those good news stories coming out of Macedonia. Granted, you can have all the rakia you want and limited producers for mastika, but Smidgen, Macedonia's first gin, I think is a good news story that we can close this podcast on.
The possible ad source.
An ad source, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, we haven't talked about that in a long time because I think we just gave up on it.
Yeah.
Looking for sponsors. So anyway, great to be here. Great to be with you, Svetlin, here actually recording a podcast.
Yeah, great to have you.
Again, there are good things going on in Macedonia, and I think we need to kind of focus on that, especially when we, after talking about so many dark and depressing
I'll try.
Okay, good. All right, great catching up with you, Svetlin.
Yeah, you too, buddy. Take care.
You too.